All right. All right, good evening, everybody. My name's Kent Tranter. I'm a Civil Works Project Manager with the Army Corps of Engineers, Wilmington District. Can everybody hear me okay? Everybody in the back? All right, good deal. First off, just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is a great crowd. I appreciate everyone taking time out of their schedule to come and meet with us tonight. We're going to talk about the General Reevaluation Report and Environmental Assessment for the Beach Renourishment Project for Surf City. So we're going to run through some slides tonight. Feel free to ask questions. There will be an opportunity at the end. We would ask that if you ask a question to come up to the microphone. We're streaming this on YouTube Live, so in order for that to be picked up, we'd like to use the microphone so everybody at home can hear your questions and the response. So one quick admin note, there was a sign-in sheet up at the front table. If you didn't get a chance to on the way in, please, before you leave, sign that. So we like to keep track of the participation and that type of stuff. So, all right. Well, again, thank you very much for coming out tonight. Greatly appreciate it. Again, my name is Kent Tranter. With me tonight, I've got some members of the project team that's working on the project with me, as well as district leadership. So I'm going to call you guys by name. Just give them a quick wave so everybody knows who you are. Of course, we have our district engineer, Colonel Morgan.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening.
To his left is Justin Bashoff from our environmental branch. Got Lisa Bishop from our geotechnical branch. Carter Rucker for our coastal engineering branch. Keith Keeney, who's our lead planner for the study. And then in the back, trying to hide, is Dave Conley, our PAO. And to his right is Bob Kiesler, who's the chief of programs and project management for. Brett Walter snuck in there on me. He's our chief of planning. So, okay. I can. All right, just a quick agenda of what we're planning on covering tonight. Again, the purpose of the meeting, why we asked everybody out here tonight. We'll give you a quick project overview, and we'll talk briefly about the report. We'll talk about the recommended plan, some environmental compliance, what the schedule looks like, and then how you can view the report if you haven't already, and how you can submit comments if you haven't, if you just choose to do so. Okay, purpose of the meeting. Why did we ask everybody to come here tonight? What we want to do is provide you with information on the draft report, the recommended plan. I will caution it that this is the draft report. Things will change. There will be changes that come, policy, legal, cost, those types of things as this gets updated to a final report. But it's to gather information, get your inputs, let you know what's going on. It's an opportunity, again, for you to have input and for us to address any of your concerns. Okay, purpose of the report. You guys heard me call it a general reevaluation report. That's kind of the Army Corps of Engineers name for we're going to go back and look at something that we already looked at once. In this case, there's a reason that we did that. We need to determine that a Surf City only portion of the project remains economically justified, technically feasible, and environmentally acceptable. As I'm sure everyone in this room probably knows, this feasibility study was completed in 2010. And then the project kind of sat there waiting for funding for a while. We finally got funding in 2019. We went to start doing the partnership agreement, and the scope changed because North Topsail Beach pulled out. Unfortunately, because of that, when we went back and looked, The magnitude of the change of the project was outside of the Corps' ability to say, yes, we're allowed to do this by Congress. So we had to go back and to get a new authorization. This report goes back and looks at the previous report, and it'll give us a new authorization, which will be just for the Surf City only portion of the project. Once that's approved, we'll go to construction and we'll get the project built. This was the most kind of expeditious process we could come up with. The Corps made the decision, no new modeling for engineering or cost. So we're just taking the existing project as it was authorized in 2010. We're lopping off 3.9 miles, which is the North Topsail Beach portion, and we're going to build the Surf City portion of the project. And there you can see. So it's about 6 miles. You'll see, I'm not bad at PowerPoint. That yellow line does extend past the Surf City town limit. There's a reason for that. The northern end of the project is going to extend from the Surf City line about 15 parcels into North Topsail Beach for the transition, for the taper back to the beach. We wanted to do that because we wanted to maximize protection and benefits for Surf City. So instead of it transitioning prior to the line and then ending at the line, and those people on the northern end not getting the full amount of protection, this way they will. On the south end, it'll tie into the existing Topsail Beach project. Okay, so you heard me talk briefly about the 2010 project. That was back when the feasibility report was completed, scientist report, authorized project. This slide is here just to show that things that we would normally look at in a feasibility study or a general reevaluation that we didn't look at were looked at in 2010. So other options like non-structural options, alternative berm and dune profiles, all that stuff was looked at back in 2010. And that part of our job was to make sure that remained valid, which it does. And the alternative that maximized the net benefits was the selected plan, recommended plan, authorized plan back then, which is your recommended plan now, which is the 50-foot wide berm, 6 feet high, 25-foot wide dune at a height of 14 feet. So essentially what that means is it's the same project. It's just shorter. Okay. Current alternatives array. We did have to go back and look at alternatives. If you read through these, the only difference in them really is the environmental window, except for alternative 1. And that's why it's 2A, 2B, and 2C instead of 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're really the same. It's all the same. It's the same profile. It's the same nourishment interval. It's just how we work with the environmental windows that are out there. So in 2A, it's building the project within the current environmental windows, which is the same as the 2010 with the hopper dredge windows. 2B is expanded windows. The hopper dredge windows expanded to match the beach placement windows for all the events, for the initial construction and for renourishments. And then 2C, which is the expanded windows for initial construction and then following the windows for the renourishment events, which is what our proposed action is. And that was probably really confusing, but Justin's going to go into more detail on those later.
Use you just a little bit more.
Okay, the 2010 authorized plan versus our recommended plan. It's essentially the same plan. This is your profile, your beach profile on the right. All the numbers remain the same. It's just shorter. It was 9.9 miles, now we're down to 6 miles, which is just Surf City. So nothing has changed as far as the profile. It's the same plan that was authorized in 2010. I will add that because the length of the project has changed, the volume of sand has changed. It's 21.8 million cubic yards from the borrow areas for the entire project. That's initial construction plus all the renourishments. So altogether 21.8 million. For initial construction, it's 8 million cubic yards. And for all the nourishments together, it's 13.8 million cubic yards. That's a lot of sand. Okay. So this is our recommended plan. The recommended plan that we have is the NED, or the National Economic Development Act, and comprehensive benefit plans. What does that mean? That means that this is the plan that provides the greatest net economic benefits, and it provides the best comprehensive benefits. Comprehensive benefits looks at not just economics, but it looks at social impacts, environmental impacts, and a regional-wide economic analysis. So again, 6 miles, same as the 2010 authorized project, same profile. We just talked about the cubic yards of sand. Renourishment interval is every 6 years for a total of 7 events. Again, same as the 2010 authorized plan. Initial construction approximately 16 months, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's if we go to construction and we adjust the windows, those environmental windows that we talked about, it would be 16 months from start to finish, and our proposal is that we do that all the way through. So once we go, we go. We build the whole thing out. Cost, 187 million for initial construction, 317 million for nourishments. That's cost shared, 65 federal, 35 non-federal for initial construction, and 50-50 for the renourishments. So the key here, again, is that this is the same plan as the 2010 authorized project, only shorter. Similar slide to the first one I showed you with the map. It shows the project limits, 6 miles. We just wanted to show you where we're getting the sand. It's coming from offshore. Those are the proposed borrow areas that we're going to take the sand from. So that's where your 21.8 million cubic yards goes from.
Just saying it's the same image that you
Yeah, it's the same image that we have over there if anybody wants to look at it. I did forget at the beginning to say these slides will be available to you guys afterwards. We'll post them on our website. The town will post them on their website. So if I'm cruising through something that you want to look at closer, you'll have that opportunity. Okay. This slide shows the economics, the benefits, and the benefit cost ratio. And the benefit cost ratio is kind of how the Corps looks at whether or not a project is economically justified or not. You've got 2 columns here, one with recreation benefits, one without recreation benefits. In order to use the recreation benefits, the without recreation benefits has to be over 0.5. You guys are well over that at 1.3, so you get to add in the recreation benefits. It bumps it up to 2.9. Healthier project, better benefits. It helps when the Corps is looking at funding projects. You guys don't have to worry about that in this case, but it's an important number that they'll look at to decide whether or not to build the project. Parking and access, an important one, because if the town doesn't meet parking and access, then the Corps won't build the project. Fortunately for you guys, the leadership in the town has done a terrific job of being out in front of this, and all the parking and access requirements have been met. So we don't need to worry about that. And that's basically 10 parking spots within a quarter mile of every beach access. Okay, Justin, you're up.
Would y'all prefer I sit or stand?
Oh, stand.
All right, stand.
So I think one thing I'd just like to add, if my mic would work, was Kent was kind of talking you through the initial part of our general reevaluation report. There was a lot of core parlance and governmentese, but that's the report side. And what Justin's going to run you through is the environmental assessment and the environmental changes and impacts. So those two go hand in hand in terms of our reanalysis and analysis of this project. So Justin's taking you through more of the environmental impacts and the assessment of that.
Can everyone hear me all right? Better?
Just put that on Justin, just put that on the podium.
Yeah, I can do that if this is well. Excuse me 1 second, please. All right, well, thank you, Kent, for that introduction. Like Kent said, the majority of the changes to this project really are captured in some of the environmental changes. So since the 2010 EIS, the primary changes, like Kent said, were project length reduction, refinement of our borrow areas, changes to sand volume, changes to the environmental windows we intend to work in, and the general time and duration of the work. So again, as Kent pointed out earlier, primary change is a reduction in project length. Previously, we'd included North Topsail Beach, that 3.9-mile red section you see on the screen. That is being dropped from the current project, so it remains within the Surf City project limits, plus that 1,000-foot transition area into North Topsail Beach, approximately 6 miles total. So again, change to sand volumes. Over the 50-year project life, the takeaways really are at the bottom of this slide. Reduction from 32.3 million cubic yards to the current 21.8, and approximately 1/3 reduction in those volumes. And that's reflected not only in the initial construction, but in subsequent nourishment events as well. Environmental windows, we with alternative 2C, which is the preferred alternative, these will change. Alternative 1 is our no action. That was no federal project constructed. Alternative 2A is the Surf City only template, and with our more traditional hopper dredging windows, with work occurring from December 1st to March 31st. Alternative 2B is the Surf City template with expanded environmental windows, meaning for initial construction and subsequent nourishments, changing from the relatively restrictive December 1st to March 31st to an expanded November 16th to April 30th. Alternative 2C widens the environmental window a bit further. There will be no window for initial construction, so one continuous event, and then subsequent nourishment events would have that wider November 16 to April 30th window. This is essentially the same information in a table form with definitive timelines. You see for initial construction, let me point here for those that hopefully everyone can see. But for instance, initial construction for all alternatives in the Surf City only template would be 16 months. As our environmental windows widen a bit, we anticipate fewer events, from 4 events having to stick within the traditional window. Can everyone hear? Yes, thank you very much. From 4 events in the traditional window, when that window is widened for initial construction and for nourishment events, there are 3 events, then 1 continuous event with the preferred alternative 2C, which would be no environmental window for the initial construction and expanded windows for the nourishment events. And here on the right side, the nourishment specifically, a total 5.5 month expected duration, but the event the event incidence would go down as the windows expand from 2 to 1, and then 1 for both the 2B and 2C alternatives. So general changes, the theme, as Kent mentioned earlier, really is reduction. We have a reduced project length, so while impacts may be similar in variety, they are lesser in scope. The reduced project length will have reduced beach placement and dune impacts, reduced greenhouse gas emissions because of the reduced time machinery needs to be on site and working. Generally reduced sand volumes, so less disruption to the marine environment, including hard bottom habitats. The expanded environmental windows will reduce potential impacts to the critically endangered northern right whale by reducing time that our equipment is in the water. Temporary impacts may be elevated because we intend to work during higher times of biological activity. However, with no initial construction window, the storm risk benefits of the project can be realized as soon as possible. Again, in time and duration, as I mentioned on the last slide, the time and duration in total will not change, but will be captured in fewer events, so fewer disruptive events in total. And there'll be no changes to impact areas such as, but not necessarily limited to, wetlands and floodplains, inlets, flats and sounds, scrub thickets, and other environmental impact areas covered both in the 2010 EIS and in our current report that's available online. And for a more detailed analysis, I do encourage you all to go to our current draft our General Reevaluation Report and Environmental Assessment. There we go, almost. Do definitely want to mention that the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is a partner agency in this action. You may know this organization previously. They were the Minerals Management Service. They'll serve as a cooperating agency for our consultation requirements to make sure we're in line and abiding by our environmental commitments and other laws such as the National Historic Preservation Act, consistency determinations, Madison-Stevenson Fishery Act, and others. Every federal project is required to assess the potential impacts to the environment, and the purpose really is just to give a snapshot of environmental compliance that we are undertaking. And this bleeds into the next slide a bit. There we go. So the takeaway here is really that we are doing our due diligence, and our draft report is being circulated with the agencies that hold us to task and be sure that our project is in fact in compliance with the laws we need to be and is taking care of our environmental commitments and taking into account potential impacts. A handful of agencies you see on the screen here, the Fish and Wildlife Service for endangered species impacts, as well as NOAA, our North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. And for specific dates, as Kent said, this presentation will be available for you to peruse on your own afterwards if you'd like. Otherwise, it's just a long slide to read all the way through. Kent, I think I'm going to hand this back to you if you don't mind. Project timeline.
Thank you.
Yeah, covered up.
Okay, so good evening again. I just wanted to touch briefly on the timeline and what we're looking at as far as getting the report signed and authorized and really getting to what everybody wants to know is when are we putting sand on the beach, right? Okay, so starting on the left, that was our 2010 feasibility report. 2014, it got authorized for construction, and project got funded for construction with the Disaster Relief Act of 2019. That's when we got our funding. Scope change in 2021, right? That's when North Topsail Beach withdrew from the project. The Corps looked at it then with that draft evaluation report in 22 and figured out, okay, we can't do this. We're going to have to get a new authorization. And that's kind of where we are now. We're in that GRREA approved 2025 timeline. Once we get that approved, we'll have to go back to construction, or go to construction, which will be late 2025, early 2026. From there, there's that 18 months or 16 months for initial construction, taking us into 2027, and then you've got your 50-year period of performance through 2076, not 26. Yes, sir.
You got 2027 as the start of the project. What do you mean by that?
Start of construction.
Start of the project.
Are you referencing the project as really performance? Because if the construction begins in 2025, 2026, wouldn't the start of performance be in 2027?
It'd be when construction ended in 2027.
Oh, ended.
Right, when that initial construction is done, then your 50 years starts.
We think of the construction as the project, but it sounds like project is a return on investment term,
That's why I'm
start
calling
and
it
finish.
performance.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, I got you. Yes, sir.
That chart is calendar year, not fiscal year.
Calendar year, yes. Sir.
I guess in looking at that, I see the nourishment period at some point. When does that fall out? Is that already predetermined, or is that based upon the conditions that we have here that are analyzed?
So in the report, it's every 6 years. That's when they did the analysis back in 2010. That's when they determined that the sand loss would be enough that at 6 years you need a renourishment. If a storm comes, it could be that we need to do it in 5, or if the rate of loss of the sand is more than anticipated, it may be 5 years. Or if the beach performs really well, it may be 7 years. We've planned for the 7 renourishments, one every 6 years. We'll have to evaluate that when the time comes to see when that is. In the meantime, if a storm does come, like I said, we could go earlier, or there's emergency funding that's available that will rebuild the project back to pre-storm conditions. Ma'am.
You start at the south end or the north end and work yourself upward?
Sorry, we're trying to pick it up for the folks on YouTube.
When the project starts, do you start at the South Topsail Beach end and work your way north, or do you go 2 places and one's to the middle, or?
So that'll be left up to the contractor, however they decide to do it.
So I assume this project's already funded, like the Corps already has the money to do this?
We do.
Or are we going to expect that someone's going to have to fund this in 2025, 2026, 2027, and so on?
So we have funding for initial construction. That was part of that DRA 19 funding. So we have that for initial construction. Subsequent renourishments are not funded right now, but they would just be planned into the budget.
So the 2025 piece, when you start in November of 2025, that piece is funded already. You already have the money for that between the town and the federal government and the state.
Yes.
Okay.
So you are fully funded for fiscal year 25, which will start come 30 September. Do you have any impacts to the administrative work you have to do in FY25, given the Gantt I'm looking at here says you're going to go for a reauthorization?
Mm-hmm.
So administratively, are you incurring civil works funding or operations and maintenance army? And how do you handle that if we are under a continuing resolution?
So for this project, it was all paid for. All the money was received in 2019 with that Disaster Recovery Act. So it's sitting. The district doesn't physically hold the money. It's up at, I think, probably headquarters.
Okay.
But the Army and the Corps of Engineers has that money already.
Roger that.
If we were funded in 2019, how much has this gone up for 2025 economy and everything?
Sure.
So how are we really fully funded, or we're going to be at a stop?
The cost has increased. I mean, anytime you have a delay or wait, have time, the cost will go up. Right now, we are below the funding that was set aside. So the funding that was set aside in 2019 was for Surf City and North Topsail Beach. So you're good. as far
So
as
we
funding.
get both of those fundings just for Surf City?
Yes.
Okay.
It was all funded as one project, so it wasn't ever divided up. It's all one pot of money.
Just quick question on funded versus non-funded. Again, for a layperson, non-funded just sounds inherently bad. But it occurred to me, I'm not sure anything is funded 20 or 30 or 40 years from now, is it? I mean, not this project. Does the government make financial commitments 20 or 30 or 40 years out?
Not that far out that I know of, but the funding, they gave us the funding for initial construction. For the renourishments and stuff, that would have to be something that would be budgeted in.
But that doesn't sound as shocking as if you were building a house locally and you weren't funded. That would be a little disconcerting, but
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't expect this to be funded that far out unless I'm missing a point.
No, you're exactly right.
So in our processes, as we got post-construction and complete, and the 50-year project, as I'm using my air quotes, begins, and then 6 years in, 3 years prior to that, we would start our processes as the Corps of Engineers to support this coastal storm risk management project to make sure that our higher headquarters and all of Congress knew this is going to be a requirement over that 3-year budget cycle that we worked through. So 3 years in advance, we would say Surf City renourishment, let's get it planned, and then we would go through that process then. So.
Okay. Any other questions before I move on? Yes, sir. Not yet, sir. Almost. We're close.
Timeline is always the question. You've got, from what I've read in the papers, May of 25 Chiefs report. So you're going from Chiefs report to boots on the ground within 7 months. That seems like a very, very aggressive timeline.
It is.
And I know a little bit about the stuff. The fleet is already booking out into 25, 26. So it's a question of if you're bidding in November, will fleet even be available for the winter 25, 26?
That's a great point. It is a tight timeline. We're trying to be aggressive and go to construction as soon as we can. The milestones or the other one? So you're correct. I do think because, and the contractors all know this is coming.
Oh, yeah.
So I think due to the size of it, 16 months of steady business, I think that there'll be a lot of interest in it.
There definitely will.
Yeah.
I get calls on a monthly basis from my contacts in the dredging industry asking me what's going on with Surf City.
Yeah, so I don't think we'll have a problem with availability, but valid point, and you're correct. It's a tight timeline. There's one little hiccup in the road, and it could delay things. But we want to be aggressive to try to get sand on the beach as soon as we can. This kind of goes with the other slide, a breakdown more of just this particular report. So we're here in the public information meeting. The next milestone for the Corps is the agency decision milestone. That'll be in November. After that, the report we'll finalize the report. We'll send it up, and it'll start its review process with South Atlantic Division headquarters and on up to get the Chief of Engineers to get signed, which we're anticipating will be May of 25.
What do you mean by agency decision milestone?
So that's an internal milestone where we meet with division leadership, and we basically say, here's our final plan. Do you approve? So it's the agency being the Corps of Engineers. It's their decision milestone on yes, go forward with the final, or no, go back and do some more homework and come back. I will say Leadership is very supportive of this, all the way up through headquarters. Everybody wants to see this project built. So I don't think we'll have any issues with that.
So why can't it be done fast?
Unfortunately, we've got our internal processes that we have to follow, and those things take some time.
As part of that process, will you give insight to the Surf City citizens on your acquisition strategy? And I'm assuming that your head of agency is the acquisition decision authority, and will there be any insight to the type of contract vehicle that you would be employing?
I think so. Bob, I'm going to ask you to help with that one. As far as the acquisition strategy, is that?
We would follow, can you hear me? We'd follow a normal policy for acquisition strategy. Non-federal sponsor always has say-so in it, but it would be presented through our same acquisition strategy board. I would say because of the scale of this contract, it's going to be unrestricted ocean certified dredges, which is a very tight group of folks. So it'll be a public bid opening that we'll put a solicitation out. It'll go out, and based on meeting the qualifications, the lowest bidder will get the job. That's similar to the points Kent was making. We don't tell the contract how to build the house. We tell them what you want to build. If they come in, each contractor may have a different approach or different skill sets with tools or number of dredges, and propose based on our plans and specs how do they meet the contract at the biggest pace. To Chris's question about tight timeline, the one reason we're asking for initial construction with anytime windows, with no windows for initial construction, whatever day you start, you could finish. And so that would minimize, that would get you to finishing the project faster. So I would say acquisition planning process is going to be, I'd be shocked if it's not unrestricted ocean certified dredge contractors.
Okay, this slide just talks about how you can view the report. So the report is, there's a quiz on that later. The report can be found on our website. That can also be found on the town's website. Feel free, if you want to take a picture. I don't expect anybody to memorize that, but again, these slides are available or will be available after this, so you can go to that link. And then if you do have questions, we've got a email address set up, surfcitygr@usace.army.mil. That comes to me and a few other folks. We'll take your question, I'll send it out to the team to evaluate, and we can get a response back to you. The other email there, Mr. Eric Gash is our environmental PDT member, so there is an environmental question. You can direct that to him, or you can use the Surf City GR email, and that again will come to me, and I can farm it out to folks. We do ask that all comments be sent to us before or on or before October 4th of 2024. Any questions on how you can view it?
I would like to add, Ken, if you don't mind. I'm remiss as an environmental professional if I didn't say this sooner, and I actually didn't during my other slide, but this is all part of our NEPA compliance process, this draft report being out there for public and agency review. So if you do decide to dive deeper into the report, please do scrutinize, please do give us your comments. All comments will be addressed in the final document, so there's really no good reason why it wouldn't be worth your while to really dive into this report, see what's going on in your community, and let us know your thoughts. Thank you all very much.
I do ask that if you submit a comment and you want a response back, to please put your name and your email address, and we'll get back to you. that's it as far as the presentation is concerned on the report and on the project. We'll take more questions. Please, wherever the microphone ended up, if you do have a additional question, use the microphone so that folks at home can hear you. But before we do that, Colonel, do you have any comments or anything you wanted to say?
I know this has been somewhat of a journey, right, to get to this point. It's been something that's been in the works for quite some time. I'm definitely thankful for the town of Surf City to sticking with us through the course of this process. It's been one of the best non-federal sponsors. That's kind of the moniker we have for our towns and communities that we partner with. It's been one of the best for the Wilmington district to work for. So we're committed to delivering this project. We've got a lot of hoops to jump through, most of which are dictated to us by law. So we're not going to violate the laws that we have on the books. And of course, there's other challenges with those laws specific to an authorization, which gives us the permission to do something. And sometimes that authorization does not come with an appropriation, which is money, right? So sometimes those are not always synchronized, as you saw some in the early part of the timeline of this project, right? So there was a gap to where the project was authorized and then it finally got appropriated many, many years later. And there's a multitude of projects like that across the nation. But just again, fully committed to seeing this project through. This is kind of the last hurdle. We do have funds availability and funds on hand earmarked, or excuse me, strike that word, dedicated towards delivering this project. So there's no additional requirement that Congress would have to go back and take any type of action for us to proceed upon completion of this report and our NEPA compliance documents and then our internal approval to be able to then move forward. So that's why you see the aggressive timeline. Like I said, the team's fully committed to working with the town of Surf City to deliver this. So thanks.
I got two questions. One, earlier you said it'd be up to the contractor as to which direction he'll be moving. But we've been told since 2010 it would be from the south north.
So it will be up to the contractor to decide how they want to do it. Sometimes they go from the south, sometimes north, sometimes they'll come in the middle and put pipes that go out to both ends. I can't say which they'll choose. I will say that, and this is just from my personal look at it, where the borrow areas that we're planning on using it would make sense to start in the south and go north. But again, I'm not a professional.
Y'all don't have any control over that.
No. Did you have a second question, sir?
Yeah, but I forgot what it was. I'm old.
We'll come back to you. Yes, sir.
Are there any restrictions on that construction? So can they take the whole 6 miles and be doing construction activities? Or have you limited them to certain segments or maximum portions of the beach?
So I don't think it'd be beneficial from a cost perspective for a contractor to try to do it all at once. I think it may be extremely difficult. That would require a substantial amount of equipment and personnel to be able to do it.
But you don't have any restrictions. They
Correct. So once we solicit a contract and select the contractor, you're kind of getting into means and methods, which we don't necessarily dictate or specify unless we provide those within our specification. So in this case, that contractor will develop his proposal based upon, whatever equipment he has available, whatever additional subcontractors or vessels or other coordination that they do with their other partners as they work to deliver that project. And then they'll provide that to us after they've been awarded as a successful bidder.
Okay, and then his plan will then dictate what portions of the beach are open and which are closed during that 16-month window? Correct,
and we've got a pretty good product that we put together each time we do a renourishment. Of course, this one would be initial construction. It's a GIS-based product that you can zoom in down to the parcel level to see property lines. And once we get that contractor's plan, we'll work with the town as well to make sure that gets over-communicated to the community. And then you also have, an online Google Maps type based product that will show you kind of a time base or time lapse of where the contractor is going to be working and when, and what sections would be closed. So we'll continue to keep that updated throughout the course of that process.
Okay, and then are there any restrictions on time of day they can work? So am I going to have to be up at 4 in the morning every day listening to folks out on the beach, or?
Household listed at 24/7.
Yeah, and that's an efficiency factor for that contractor. So I think it could be something to be expected for 24-hour operations as they're fighting the weather, fighting the waves, trying to maintain and maximize their efficiency in delivering, their project.
Yes, sir. And I failed to put an example of that tracker the Colonel talked about. I think Kelly has one on the website on Surf City. But what happens, it gets fed every day by the contractor. So what you're talking about is, they may be working 24 hours a day, but you'll see, typically what you'll see on the beach is a section about 2,000 feet wide. That's the construction area. And those areas that they've already worked on, they'll put sand over the pipe so you can still use the beach on either side. So that one area that's pretty limited in scope during the day, that may be impacted. But as the Colonel said, we'll keep pushing information. I'll share with the town. We'll all be pumping as much information as we can, as well as the safety information. But it's really not like the whole beach is kind of closed off where you're getting impacted every day.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an example right there of what it looks like. You'll see a green area where the contractor's finished. There'll be a legend on the side, and you could kind of plan your day, which accesses you can go to. As I said, if this area has already been constructed, there'll be walkovers over the pipe where you can get through, and then you'll be able to plan where they're going next.
I got a question for you. It's taken us 15 years to get to this point, and then the project starts in 27. Well, the 50-year project starts in 27. Let's say a storm hits 5 years out, do we have to go through the same process, or is my understanding now, since it's a project, we could get renourishment quicker?
Are you saying after initial construction, then a storm hits?
When the project starts in 27.
So,
yeah.
Kind of once you're in a federal project, then if that happened, we would either do a renourishment early based off of surveys and the damage, or if it was significant, there is emergency funding available.
So we don't have to go through the 15-year project that we've been in so far?
No,
okay.
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
It'll only be 14.
Are you able to comment on whether or not parcels that are currently unbuildable will be able to have structures built on them after the project?
Yeah, I don't think.
Is that a CAMA question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I just remembered what I forgot. The water bill that's currently in Congress right now has a provision for pushing this project at all haste. Is that possible, or is it just going to go on the timeline that we have?
So everybody is doing as much as we can as fast as we can. There is no room in there where nobody is not working on the project.
It's not at the bottom of somebody's in basket, is it?
Definitely not. I'm not going to let that happen.
Me and my technical questions. With y'all opening it up potentially for year-round work, I noticed we keep talking about hoppers. Have y'all considered opening it up to hydraulics during the summer season? That's during that time frame we have calm enough waters off of here that, the Texas or Weeks' dredges could operate pretty efficiently.
We have. We looked at that and we think that the hoppers are most efficient overall to do that.
We wouldn't specify the type of lawnmower to cut the grass. So, Chris, we wouldn't specify the type of dredge. If a contractor wants to come in and has a pipeline dredge that can do the job, to your point, we would allow that to happen. So we.
Seems like it frees up a lot of time in the summer.
Yeah, so we would put out, you may get a company that may partner with another company, and somebody brings a pipeline and a hopper, depending on this, we're gonna put the project out there and say, please come build this, here's the constraints, and they're going to take their toolbox and come and decide how they would go. We don't tell them, like Colonel said, means and methods. We just say, please build this, and they come tell us how, and as long as their proposal meets our standards, that's what we would go with. So that by not telling them how to build it or and what equipment to build, you maximize competition, which I think is better for the project and better for the price.
North Thomas Beach had a private operation several years ago with the cutter head, and they filled up the beach with rocks, and they had to get a screen off.
I have a question.
Do you have a question about? They in fact did. It's accurate. North Thompson Beach did do that, the bar area Q. So if you have some questions about, our avoidance of rock, I'm happy to answer them for you. I think it's for him.
My question is the cutter head feasible in our operation? We've been told all along that it's not. Had to use a hopper dredge.
I'm still here, Mike. Yeah, and in a lot of situations where you have rock like that, it might not be feasible to use a cutter head dredge. There are some borrow areas out there that have rock in them. There are some that don't. It's from a sand standpoint, it's pretty advantageous that the change happened for Surf City. Topsail Beach has a borrow area in Banks Channel. North Topsail Beach is trucking it in from other locations. So that's kind of freed up the entire gambit of borrow areas for Surf City to use. So you have a lot more options on the table in terms of where you take that sand from.
So it would depend more on the bar area than anything else.
Correct. It would depend on which borrow area you're in, whether or not there's hard bottom or rock there that you have to worry about. On that map over there, I don't have the hard bottom on there, but if you go to the report and the main report, and I believe it's in the environmental section, there's a map like that has your hard bottoms in each bar area mapped with a 400-foot buffer around it. So you can see which ones have the rock in them and which ones don't.
I have a question for the mayor. Does the town have discussion around as far as its portion of the funding?
Yes, we do. So the funding, our side of the funding is there. I think the only thing that we have left to do is probably just a few more easements. Other than that, we are secure on our end.
Is there a plan to put dune grasses on that berm, the 14-foot high berm? Is that part of this project as well?
Yes, sir. It is.
Is the 50 feet berm we're getting the same as Topsail Beach has when they did their project years ago?
I'm not sure what size their dune is.
No,
Topsail, to the south.
I remember going down there right after they did it and noticing the length, of the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And just wondered if we had the same approval for, being.
I'm not sure, honestly, what their template looked like. Do you have any insight on that, Carter?
No, I haven't seen Topsail's. I haven't seen Topsail's template, but I imagine it's approximately the same. And this project will be tying into that template. So if they were to be constructed at the same time, they'd be pretty close to even. But that's just, if that happens to line up.
I'm the engineer for Topsail Beach, so I can probably answer this question for you guys. The beach down there, the dune that was built was a 12-foot high dune, 25-foot wide at the top. 5-on-1 slope on the front, and then we built roughly 175 feet of beach out in front of it. I've seen the overfill templates that the Corps shared those with us over time. Basically, the initial construction would be very similar to what you see at Topsail now. We maintain a little bit more beach width than 50 feet, but that's because we have a navigation issue that keeps sending us sand. So.
Okay.
Two questions. One, in some of the other beach replenishments that I've seen, the beach entrances get changed, like the angled as opposed to straight on. Is there any plan on that?
Are you referring to access points?
Yes, access points.
To the best of my knowledge, they're going to be the same.
Okay. Second question is, I know this thing got funded or approved originally in 2010 and then funded whenever. What was the difference in the amount of sand that you have to move from then until now? Like, obviously the beach is not as big as it was in 2010 or 2019 or whenever, and we can see that right now. Is there a significant amount of sand, extra sand that has to be moved because we waited so long?
Do you know?
No. Okay.
So originally it was, North Topsail Beach and Surf City, and so I think your initial construction volume then was 13.7 million cubic yards. So yes, there's been, erosion and storm events since that time, and surveys have captured that loss of sand in the new estimated volume for initial construction. So unfortunately, we don't have like a quantity that we could tell you on that, but it is 8 million cubic yards for initial construction, so that's the volume you'll need. And then overall is 21.8, so.
And then, of course, before we go to soliciting that contract, we would survey to confirm the requirement for those quantities. And then even after that was awarded to the contractor would do the same as well, right, to go back and check their math, because we know how dynamic these systems can be. So there will be a refined number that gets determined, here in a few months.
Let's cross our fingers and it doesn't change much. We did get a question online.
Okay.
For beachfront homeowners, if the project goes in front of their house and they have a private beach access, if that is damaged or if it needs to be removed, who is responsible for funding that to be corrected after the nourishment project is done?
I believe the homeowners are for the private ones. There will be new ones built on the public accesses as part of the project, but for the private ones, that would be the responsibility of the homeowner.
I guess when we're talking about like millions of cubic feet, it's hard for me to visualize what that means. But with that photograph, and I'm assuming like maybe right now, that's probably low tide, because I know high tide at our beach, it's at the grass right now, right? So can you give us a visual, like looking at the pier, what is this beach going to look like for those of us that can't put the cubic feet into terms of, is it possible to do that?
Can you just point where the...
There's an image on the town's website that shows the Wrightsville Beach project. Which is a pretty good visual as to, I'm sorry, I'm like leaning back on you. A pretty good visual as to what the actual beach width will start to look like with it.
Mr. Trainer's gonna show us some of that, and we're gonna hold him to it.
Yeah, definitely don't hold me to this, but I think that's what the high tide condition would look like, more or less. Just, very quick visual glance at it.
Yeah.
Is that the big thing you're talking about?
Yeah,
Oh, that's the right one.
Yeah, so that's the Wrightsville Beach project that was just finished, I think it was March or May of this year. So you can see a pretty significant difference, and I think their template's pretty similar to ours.
Yeah. And that was, Wrightsville Beach was simply a re-nourishment, 1 million cubic yards.
So 1 million cubic yards versus how many yards are going on this beach?
On the beach,
So
6.
it's a big difference between an initial construction and a renourishment cycle, right? So you'll see it'll be a significant difference to you. That's about all, as layman's terms I could put it.
How many cubic yards in a dump truck?
Oh, that's a good one. I got that note in my phone. Hold on one sec. Give me 1 second.
So the question I asked is how many cubic yards are in a single dump truck load, to kind of quantify that.
Okay. An average dump truck is 10 cubic yards, right? So 1 million cubic yards is what we put on Wrightsville Beach. That's 100,000 dump trucks. So you're used to seeing, like, you know, when the town does their own job and it's dump trucks coming, it's a lot of sand, right? But this is a real lot of sand that's coming. And just so you know, a lot of us, Kent included, the Colonel, myself, we live up here. We're excited about this project. So think about 1 million cubic yards went on Wrightsville Beach, and some of the comments we were getting online were the ladies would come to the beach and say, the ocean's a lot farther away than it used to be, right? So we're excited about this project. Well, you're going to get a lot of sand.
Can you tell me what happens during sea turtle nesting season?
So the short answer is we will maintain. Thank you, sir.
I hit a knob, so it's still working.
That is a good question, and it is a concern of the project, especially with different environmental windows. The long and short is that we are coordinating those actions with the Fish and Wildlife Service to get a biological opinion that this project will abide by. So the end state of that, I don't have the information to tell you at this time, but during this review process and our coordination with agencies like Fish and Wildlife in this case, those details will be sussed out so we know what this project is going to look like for those endangered species.
Is there a specification on the sand that comes back in? So have you tested the borrow areas? Those are all good, or how do you maintain quality on that?
Hey, yeah. So back when this was Surf City North Topsail Beach, there was an analysis done of those borrow areas, and that is ongoing. We do test those borrow areas. Our criteria for what we place on the beach is that it can't be greater than 10% fines. And so that's your number 200 sieve, clays, and silts. So that's the criteria there is less than 10%. And we also have criteria for gravel and shell. Those percentages also can't be greater than 10% of the total area that you're going to dredge out of. And so I don't have the clicker. So for any one of those, oh yeah, I do. Yeah, it's something else up. So for any one of those borrow areas that you would select, we designate different dredge cuts within those boxes. And then those individual boxes will be, looked at in terms of, oh, they're not on there, but it's okay.
You don't want the borrow area one?
If you can get there.
Okay. We're getting almost there.
Almost.
There we go.
All right, yeah. So this borrow area, for example, we would originally go out and take a bunch of cores and select samples, send those to the lab, have them come back, and then use those to kind of narrow down what's good sand, what's not good sand, what's rock, what can we use. And those are based on those criteria of grain size, but also the percent of fines, the percent of gravel, the percent of shell that we find in our core logs. And all of that is, based on lab analysis, but also the field log descriptions from the geologist on the rig. So we do take into consideration kind of all that stuff. It's deep in the technicals of the geotechnical appendix, which is Appendix C in the draft report. It's online. Please feel free to take a look at it and field me any questions.
So is it similar to Wrightsville Beach? So if we went out there and that would be like an example of what we could expect?
Yes and no. And so your beach will actually be compared to the native beach. So Wrightsville Beach and Surf City are two different beaches. We also go along Surf City, we take samples, and we come up with, some numbers that match your specific beach. And so our ultimate goal is to get as close to that as possible. So we want to be within a range of your native beach. So that is taken into consideration. So if your beach doesn't look like Wrightsville, then it might not look exactly the same.
Will it be regulated during the whole process of development? Will the lab testing be done through the development as it's being brought in, pumped in?
Well, so that's already been done at the time that we go and dredge. So in your investigative part of the study, that's when we go out and we classify these borrow areas and these sands. So we go out, we take samples, and send them to the lab, test them, and then we use that to build out the volume and the quality of that sand. And so we don't necessarily test it after the fact, but if we see something that doesn't match what should be there, then we stop and we say, okay, let's take a look or move to a different side of the borrow area. So yeah, if it came up different than what we would expect, then we would make a change, but we test it before we go out.
But if you don't test it as it's being done, how do you know there's a difference?
Well, it's pretty stationary. It's not totally stationary, but when we go out and we take a core, we take anywhere from 10 to 20 feet. And then when we go out and we dredge, you're talking about maybe anywhere from 3 to 10 feet that we would be taking out of there. And so you can expect some limited amount of changes in the top section of that sediment of the borrow, but as you go down core, a lot of that is going to stay the same. So one of the ways that we try to, get a handle on what those sediments are is spacing of our cores. So originally we had went out and we had done 1,000-foot spacing testing back in the 2010, 2013s. You may have noticed that we went back out last year, or the year before. I lost a year in COVID, my apologies. But we did go back out in AO and P. We wanted to take that spacing down to a tighter grid because there was such variability in these borrow areas. There's a lot of rock offshore, I'm sure everybody knows. And so we did take that spacing down to a tighter grid so we could have more confidence in what we think we're going to bring up. We do have people on the dredge and we have people on the beach as construction is occurring. And so if we notice something is not what it should be, if it's too much shell or if it happens to be rock, or if the fines percentage doesn't look right, we can full stop and then we can move to a different part of the borrow area. So we don't
it'll all be done visually. It won't be done by a lab.
Not after the fact, no. Once you move it, it changes anyway. So
I agree with that to a certain point, but being in the agricultural business in the past, I know when I blowed rock up to make it for the roads, it had to be tested once it was put down on the road too to make sure it still stayed within standards, because when I crushed it, I could crush it differently.
Right, and with rock, that is a factor, because a rock is what it is until you crush it, right? And then it's a bunch of different things. As we're looking at sediments, they're already loose materials, and so we were aiming at anywhere from 500 to 750 foot spacing on our borings for the delineation of those areas. Normally, the criteria is 1,000 feet, but with the variability, we wanted to have it tighter down to 500. And so we wouldn't expect for, there are going to be some changes at depth as you go core to core within 500 feet, but we wouldn't expect those to be as tremendous of a change as if you took a rock and crushed it, and then that would be a much different material than a sediment itself. Normally your sediment packages tend to move around and some of it sticks together. So, but if we notice something, we will stop and we will change. We're not keen on pumping rock on the beach or mud balls or anything like that.
Consistency is the biggest thing, to make it stay there.
Yeah, you want to, the best thing you can do is put something that's close to the native beach or a little bit coarser, but we do have to work within the variability laws
that are out there for what we can put out there.
I want to go back to the slide and leave it here. I know you guys have that memorized by now, but I just want to leave that up there while we continue to talk in case anybody wants to jot that down. Any other questions? Anything from online? Okay. Well, again, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. This is a great turnout, and we appreciate it. I do want to, just to kind of echo what the Colonel said earlier, the mayor, your town manager, your town council have been heavily involved in this. And I just want to personally say thank you for your participation, for keeping us honest and asking tough questions. But they really are working for you on this project, so if you get a chance, say thank you. But it's been a pleasure to work with everyone up to this point, and I look forward to continuing that relationship as we get this sucker built. All right, thank you.